we're back. We're back, baby. It's
Hello.
good to be back, isn't it, Ed?
It's always good to be back.
So we're back in more ways than one. We're back for our weekly adventure down the rabbit hole or to the outer place, depending where you want to be. And we are back on Chasing Descent. We're back on the big channel. And I think we're going to stay here because, we tried an experiment, it didn't really work. So, hey, we're back, baby.
Cool. Well, that's less confusing for people too if there's just one channel.
Yeah. Oh, now we're too low with the volume. So who's too low? Should I name? Are we both too low?
Too low.
Too
We
low.
thought
Bit
we were right before we
quiet.
came on air. Does Shalini need to turn up her volume?
It's wow.
Oh no.
No, Nick Tarry
Nectarita
just
says we're a
says,
bit quiet too.
yeah,
Sort it
sound
out,
a bit
John.
low.
Come on. How long have you been doing this?
Well,
Jesus.
this isn't just me. You have to bring in your mic now, remember, because we're on the cloud. Right. So
How's
one,
this?
speak Ed.
Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Bring in a bit.
Ugh. How's that?
Try it now. Talk to them.
How's this one? I can speak a little bit louder as well, as long as I don't have to shout.
Right, okay, so Ed's going to speak a little bit louder, and I've turned up my volume slightly. How do I sound? Still a bit low. The music was booming, yeah, but music always does boom. So if you've turned it down because of the music, turn it back up. Still low. Oh my god.
Can't you just ramp up the audio level that's being broadcast or something?
No, there's no control over the level being broadcast from this end because it's a cloud-based system. It's like StreamYard.
Right.
So I mean, I can ramp up my audio, but I can't ramp up yours.
Well, I can probably ramp up my audio if I need to.
Well, ramp up. I mean,
Okay,
try
let
it.
me
Try it a
just
little.
let me do some technical jiggery pokery.
So, if you're new to this channel, yes, you have not joined the channel where we discuss the intricacies of Windows 11 or 10 or whatever it is, volume control and how to broadcast through the wonder of EV Mux. We're actually just trying to get our audio levels right.
Right,
Right,
microphone. Okay,
right.
I've,
Britmate
I've turned
says
I've just turned my volume up on my
you
mic.
sound you
How's
sound
that?
loud. You sound louder in my ears. You sound louder in my ears.
How's that?
Britmate says levels sound good here.
Okay, right. So, can we do this freaking show now?
Yazzie just joined. The both sound okay in my wired headphones. Cool, Yazzie.
Right, I need a drink.
You were on Twitter earlier, weren't you, Yazzie? Yeah, I need a drink too. What are you drinking tonight?
I'm drinking Kraken, and I've got some red wine, and I've got some water just for it to sit there and pretend I'm actually gonna drink it. No, I've had a good day, but I've been really busy for the last couple of weeks at work, so yeah, it's all a bit mental.
Cool. Right, okay, let's get on with it then. So we're going to talk about 9/11. We're going to revisit it, and I thought I would give the assembled multitude that are watching us, all 14 of them, a little bit of history about how the Twin Towers were actually built.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, so I mean, I've just got a couple of pictures, and what I'll do is
Considering they were built to withstand the impact of a 707, which was a considerably larger and heavier jet, which had to carry a lot more fuel because the engines were less efficient. So just to throw that in there.
Yeah, okay. So let's dig in. So I'm going to start with the construction photograph of the Twin Towers. There you go. So there's them constructing the towers, and it's quite good here because you can see a bit of the bathtub.
No, the bathtub's really significant. It's also one of the it's one of the anomalies that doesn't make any sense because there are certain it wasn't damaged, and the whole point is that if that bathtub had cracked, it would have been like a dam. The whole thing would have filled with
Yeah.
water, and it would have been the world's biggest swimming pool.
Yeah, and it would
And
have flooded about half of lower Manhattan, wouldn't it?
yeah, now you would think that if a plane crashed into a building, the building to start with doesn't go down straight into its own footprint.
Yeah.
But whatever means was used to bring that down, you would think that the vibrations just from the pancake effect of the floors, each floor thudding against the bottom of that bathtub, would have caused cracks and leaks and water. The
You
other
would have
thing to
thought so.
note, which you can see quite well in that picture, is that the I saw an interview with one of the engineers who actually built it,
Hmm.
and he said that the outside was designed, the whole, not just the outside, but the whole building was designed a bit like that fly screen. We used to
Yeah.
have it on front doors in Zambia, or like the outer door, um, and the whole point being that you could stick a pencil through one part of the fly screen,
Hmm.
and it doesn't cause the whole structure to completely collapse. So there's a lot of aspects of the construction of that those both of those buildings,
Hmm. Yeah,
which
and
because
you can see quite well there as well. It's like you can see the outer perimeter of the steel that surrounds the outside of it, and then you can see the core, which where all the cranes and things they're sitting on top of the core, and that's where all the elevator shafts would be, and that's that and the outer part of that building were the strongest parts. And let me just show you how thick these girders were. Look how thick they were. That's steel. That's not aluminium or some crap. Those are really thick, 4-inch thick steel girders. And you'd think, how does a can of Coke penetrate that? You know? Because
it doesn't.
basically, a plane's just an aluminium tube.
And it's also, if you look at how sturdy they are,
Hmm.
and also how, because the official explanation says that the essentially the thing that was holding the floors to the side of the tower,
Hmm.
that was the weak point, and it was those what collapsed and caused the pancake effect. But none of the official explanation, as we know, makes any kind of sense, because most of the building turned to dust to start with. Um, and the amount of debris that was left over, those two towers, I mean, we're talking about thousands of chairs and desks and photocopiers and people
Hmm.
and toilets and all the different things that happen in the building, and none of that was, I mean, you don't see loads of toilets and desks and stuff piled up in the center of New York after those towers came down.
You don't see anything, really.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And
And
so something else happened.
yeah, and let me just bring up
And
the.
I think it was a combination of factors. I don't think it was any one thing, because to bring buildings like that down into their own footprint,
Yeah,
to start with, that doesn't happen by accident. If it happened by accident, you wouldn't have highly paid demolition teams that go around the world destroying buildings that need to be destroyed really carefully.
exactly.
And those two buildings needed to be brought down. If you actually think about how big they are and
Yeah,
how little damage they caused to the surrounding buildings, I
yeah.
mean, there's only one or two of the buildings that had to be pulled. I mean, obviously, we're not talking about World Trade Center 7, which is a whole other
We'll get there. We'll
kettle of
get there.
fish. I'm sure we will. But it's just to highlight the massive inconsistencies and the things. I mean, I remember watching it happen and
Hmm.
thinking
Yeah,
there is something funny going on here, and
yeah.
it just didn't make any sense. And because I mean, I love that there's a demolition show. I can't remember the name of it. Um, but they basically, it's a crack demolition team, and each show is them demolishing another building. And when you look at the amount of time and effort and planning it takes, and different types of explosives, putting the explosives in the right places, making sure the charges go off at the right time, to bring a building down into its own footprint is unbelievably difficult, and it doesn't just pancake the hell down like
Mhm.
the NTSB and Popular Mechanics and all of those Egypts are trying to convince us happened.
Yeah, yeah. I know.
Uh,
And Ray made a very good point there about how soft aluminium is, and to be fair. you can cut fairly thick aluminium with just plain household scissors.
Mm.
You know, it's not a strong material. Um, but it's a light material, and used in the right way, and forming a tube out it, you can get a fairly reasonable facsimile of strength when it comes to flying aircraft. But and speaking of flying aircraft, here's an aircraft that ran into a building. Okay.
Damage to the building, almost none. Damage to the
Yeah,
aircraft, catastrophic. Plane's not flying ever again, probably.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's a write-off in aircraft terms.
Yeah, definitely.
And
And look at
also,
look at the building.
did
Look at
you
it's not even broke the facade.
there's a brilliant picture. I'm not sure if you've got it in your stack of a bird strike on an aircraft, and it's like
Well,
one.
strange you should mention that. Bird hits airplane.
So you're trying to tell me that that ripped right the way through a steel girder 1960s solid as fact building? I don't
Hmm.
think so. I'm sorry.
And and it penetrated all, what was it, all 7 layers of the Pentagon?
Mm, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
and managed to do so without leaving much of a trace of itself.
yeah,
Apart
yeah,
from a few things that were recovered and had photographs taken, which I strongly suspect were
yeah. So
deposited there after the fact.
so that's what happens when a bird hits an aircraft, right? And it's not much better when hail hits it. Look at the state of that. And that was just flying through a hailstorm. So, planes aren't incredibly strong. Maybe the wings are stronger. Maybe they can cut right through, maybe they can leave plane
But
shaped
they're
holes
not.
in the build. No, I know they're not. I
I
know
mean,
they're not.
they're sturdy because planes. I mean, if you look at some of the tests, exactly. I mean, if you look at some of the tests that aircraft have to undergo,
Yeah,
in terms of holding their structure in flight and dealing with
yeah,
turbulence, they're very strong, but they're not designed to hit things.
yeah. Well, exactly. Look at that. That's a lamp tower. That's all that is. That's one of those towers that holds up lamps. Like you get beside the motorway.
Yeah,
And they're not made of 4-inch thick steel.
no,
And look at the state of the wing on what I believe is an A. And no, it's not an A380. It's only got 2 engines, isn't it? But anyway, speaking about bird strikes, I mean, here's a reasonable sized bird, about the size of a goose, and this is the kind of mess it can make to an aircraft. I mean, that's a big hole. You know.
a lot of the new planes have lots of carbon fiber in them as well,
Hmm.
which again is strong. And it'll keep a plane in the air, and it'll withstand all of the different vagaries that planes are designed to withstand. But um, aircraft designers generally assume that if the plane hits something, um, that's something that it's they're supposed to avoid them. This is why they have radars.
Well, that's why they're told exactly where to fly and what to do, isn't
Exactly,
it?
and I mean, there's that famous story of Captain Sullenberger, who landed the aircraft in the which river was it?
The Hudson.
Basically, yeah, the Hudson, that
Yeah.
one, and that
Sully.
was yeah, Sally, that's the one, and I mean that was a bird strike on both
Mhm.
engines, um, and hats off to Sully for getting that plane down because he saved a whole lot of lives that day, because if he'd done what his bosses and the ATC were telling him, they'd have all been dead.
Yeah, and actually, Ray makes another good point on this occasion. Where is it? Where is it?
Well, Ray's making a really good point about the Pentagon
Well,
hit
hold
in
on, hold
terms
on.
of the
Let,
speed, and if you
well,
actually look at how low that aircraft would have had to have
yeah.
flown
Well,
to
so
create the hole it did,
well,
just forget it.
exactly, because the problem is, you're flying in your plane back from your holidays, and you look up and it says you're cruising at 530 miles an hour. That's fine, but you're at 35,000 feet, where the air is much much thinner, right? Now, the World Trade Centers are effectively at sea level, and the Pentagon's more or less at sea level as well.
I mean, the whole of
So
Washington was
yeah,
and is a swamp.
exactly. So so the air density is so great that there are two things that are a problem. One, the aircraft cannot produce enough power to fly at 500 miles an hour at that density of air. And two, the airframe cannot possibly sustain flying at that speed and that density of air because it would break up.
Mm.
And these things are they're they're insurmountable, and they're physics. It's based on straightforward physics.
It's
So
the same as the towers collapsing. It's
yeah,
physics
exactly.
again, because a building doesn't collapse at free fall unless every single support holding it up is gone.
Yeah,
Simple.
yeah. And
And
those
an
buildings
aircraft,
did, they came
yeah,
down in what, 11 seconds?
yeah, it was free fall
100,
speed. Yeah.
110 floors in 11 seconds. That's
That's
free
not
fall.
pancaking floors,
No,
because
it's
if
not.
one floor pancakes down, the next floor then probably will withstand the weight for a little while and then
Yeah,
collapse. But it's
even if it's only half
mm,
or a microsecond, it's still going to slow down, and then it may get faster as it go down. But by the time you've done 110 floors, you're going to have a measurable amount of
mhm,
difference,
yeah.
not free fall speed, and that was free fall speed.
Absolutely. This is one of the things about 9/11 that I've always found personally exceedingly irritating, is trying to explain to people who easily have the brains to figure it out themselves that what they are seeing does not make any sense, does not track with what they are being told they are being seen. It's a classic case of gaslighting, but
Yeah,
that's pretty much the only thing that our dear leaders are actually getting good at these days, is gaslighting.
yeah.
And
So the chat room are getting antsy. They're like, Building 7, Building 7. Yeah, but we'll get to Building 7
with
because Building Seven's a whole treasure trove on its own, isn't it?
exactly, I
Really?
mean, we're not even, we've only just crossed the 15-minute mark. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Count your
we've
jets,
got
people.
we've got a whole like 45 minutes to go. So keep your knickers on. We will get to Building 7. We know that Building 7 is one of the elephants in the room, but we just,
The BBC. I mean, I should have clipped the BBC, shouldn't I? They were there.
well, I mean, you could probably still find it and stick it up and just do a screen share. I mean, it's
Yeah,
easy
I
enough to
probably could.
find. Because the simple fact is that there was media announcing the collapse of a building before it had actually collapsed. So explain that to me. If they didn't know, if the whole thing was just a surprise and, oh, look, Building
Mhm.
7's just gone down, but we've got Jane What's-her-face on the BBC, and the BBC have just done their typical useless BBC nonsense freaking response to it. I mean, why anyone is still watching those morons, I don't know. But it's this. The simple fact is that they can explain it away however they like, but they must have had advance notice. It's the same as the actual collapse of the Twin Towers. It's the same. I mean, even we're not hitting Building 7 yet, but you only
Uh,
have to look at a video of that thing going down,
oh,
and
well, can I read something to you? Can I?
yeah, gone.
Can I? I mean, and this is on YouTube, right? So I did a research for BBC reports Building 7 collapse. Okay, and we have a big blue notice above it. Error in BBC reporting doesn't mean that 9/11 was scripted. Well, I suppose that's right. The fact that a BBC journalist reported the collapse of World Trade Center 7 before it actually happened means 9/11 was a scripted actor based reality. Rating. It's true that a BBC journalist reported the collapse
But
of the
that's
World Trade Center 7 almost half an hour before it fell, as did a number of other news services. There is no evidence, though, that this was due to insider information or a scripted version of
well,
the
that's
terror
typical
attack.
fact checker bollocks. They basically fact check something that nobody's saying, because nobody said it was scripted, because it would be almost impossible to script something like that anyway. And they basically, it's classic diversion. They focus your attention on something that nobody's actually talking about, and then use that to make everybody who's questioning their narrative seem crazy. It's just typical BBC nonsense that they've been doing for decades and decades now. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, it's just watching the BBC. You might as well scoop your brain out of your skull and run it through the dishwasher.
So We're going to get Q&A noted on this one. I feel it coming. But I really don't care because we're not saying one thing or the other. All we're doing is basically reporting the facts as we see them. And yeah,
We're
you know,
talking physics. We are
we, we, we,
comparing.
we are
We are
talking actual physics.
yeah.
Yeah.
We are basically saying that you and I, okay, we might not be the world's best physicists, but we have a rudimentary understanding of things like gravity and inertia
Yeah.
and mass
Uh huh.
and aerodynamics and air density.
Yeah. Well,
And
I've got 2.5 degrees really because I've got a first degree and then I've got a master's and then I started doing another degree and that was purely based on physics actually, physics and astronomy, and I gave up about halfway through that one, just because one I got bored and two I couldn't afford. Well, I probably couldn't afford it because I was still in the police at that point. So but yeah,
I did
I mean,
3 years of academia and sacked it off. My degree was international relations, and
I like studying. I must admit, and
I,
I loved working in the uni. At one point, I was the manager in charge of the student labs at Paisley Uni, and I loved working in the uni. It was a great laugh. We used to give people, students would come up and go, the internet isn't working on that PC, whatever. We used to give them a floppy disk and say, here, try that. Because what we'd done is we'd downloaded a couple of websites onto the floppy, and then they'd come back and go, "Have you got the next version? Because I can only get so far." And then at Christmas we used to play Doom. We used to set up or not Doom. What was it? Quake. We used to set up a Quake server, and then charge the students to play us at Quake. So that was all good. It was all good fun.
oh dear, yeah, academia. I never really got on with it. I mean, I enjoyed the studying and the reading and the research and things like that, but
Yeah.
I found the academic atmosphere really constricting. People are very
Yeah.
wrapped up in their own bubbles, and
Oh yeah. Yeah. They are. They are.
they don't cross pollinate. You've got people that know everything about their particular subject, but you move just a couple of subjects over, and they've got no idea.
Oh, and
And
they get so wound up when someone questions their particular thesis or whatever. If someone
absolutely,
questions it, they go nuts.
yeah, absolutely, and it. Yeah, I just couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle it. I mean, I'm not really a people person at the best of times anyway. But I mean, it's just it's too. You can see the results of it. It's like when I was doing international relations, and that was at Sussex.
Uh huh.
And I remember the politics students that I used to encounter, and they were all preening, egotistical morons. And then you look at the caliber of politician that we've got today, and most of them are of my generation, and it's just like all of those idiots are now running the country, and look what we've got.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's they didn't have any kind of there was no public. I mean, they all claim to be interested in public service, but actually they're interested in personal service, and they don't have any skills apart from the politics, apart from trying to convince people to vote for them. But when you actually look at the skill sets that they've got,
Yeah.
they're absolutely not qualified to be running a bloody country. It's just absurd.
That is,
But yeah,
mate.
don't
That
even
is.
get me started because I'll go off on a rant.
Let's see if this works. I'm not sure this is going to work.
What you trying to do?
No, I was trying to. I was trying to share the. Hold on. Why is it not working? Why is that not working? I'm stopping the screen share. I'm starting the screen share. Share. Add to scene. Ah, there we go. There we go. There we go. Hold on. Let's just see if you were a producer. If I had a producer, they'd be doing this behind the scenes while while you and I would still be chatting away.
Oh dear. Yeah,
So,
well, we don't have a producer because just Ben is such a slacker. I mean,
oh
come
yes, I
on.
mean I produce shows for him. When he's doing things with Natalie and whatever, yeah, I'll produce a show for him. But Ben will just sit on his butt and basically he's not even watching tonight. The guy's just a complete and utter ass piece. Anyway, here we go.
Clouds of smoke and ash, and we know that behind that there's an empty piece of what was a very familiar New York skyline, a symbol of the financial prosperity of this city, but completely disappeared now, and New York is still unable to take on board what has happened to them today. Where the famous Statue of Liberty is, there's a field
since the attacks. Is there any estimate
but it's too frightening. Itself has 50
other attacks?
Well, a lot
Trying
of
to
people were
where's the
certainly
part where
trying
it
to,
falls
but
over?
Well, the other
remember
thing
very early on, all
that
the
winds me up
bridges
about all
being
of the
offered
coverage
accommodation in
Yeah.
is that
Anyway.
within about 20 minutes, the media were all starting to announce that it was
Oh, who
bin
did
Laden
it?
that was responsible. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
got passports that were found. And I mean, Building 7, most people have probably seen that video anyway.
Yeah. I'm sure they
And
have.
and I mean, to be honest, I can't stand more than about 10 seconds of a BBC interview without wanting to start throwing things and getting all irate and upset because they just wind me up so much. I mean, it's the media that are largely responsible for everything. I mean, we've got all these bad actors and stuff, but actually, if the media were doing their jobs and holding power to account and doing what they're being
Hmm.
paid for, particularly public broadcasters like the BBC, who
Yeah.
everyone that's daft enough to pay a license fee is paying for, um, and it's just we wouldn't have half of the or 90% of the nonsense in the world if power was being held to account, but it's not. They're all just lapdogs, and it all started on 9/11. This is why so many of us in the truther community, because it's the truther is like 9/11 truth, and conspiracy theorists that's JFK, but the whole
Yeah.
the word truther came
Oh.
from 9/11.
Oh, hold on. Here's a cracking statement for someone to make in the. I'm just going to have to jump on this, right? Because there very much was a reason. Hold on. Wait till I get there. Dun, 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 there we go. I'm going to show this one. There was no reason for building. Oh, there very much was, Rob. So, Building 7 held the records for the Department of Defense, for the CIA, and who else? There was the Department of Defense and the CIA certainly had offices in that building. And the day before 9/11, do you remember what the Secretary of Defense said? Was it Donald Rumsfeld? What did he say? He
Oh,
said, "Oh, we appear to have lost one. Was it one or three? Maybe it was one because this was what 20 years ago, 25 years ago. So we appear to have lost $1 trillion that we can't account for."
that's just that is literally just the tip of the iceberg. Because if we look at the Trade Center towers, the planes actually hit the computer room
Mhm.
of I know the name of the company, but it escapes me. And there was a whole bunch of work that had happened with installation of new UPS devices in that building. Now, you could actually make a bomb look very much like a UPS device if you wanted to, and if you line them up
Yeah,
and
yeah,
blew them up in sequence, you could actually make it look like something had exploded through that building.
yeah,
The other thing about World Trade Center 7 that you didn't mention is that it was also the Port Authority's emergency management. They had a hardened,
yeah.
sealed up
It was,
room.
yeah. The
And
FEMA.
there are even reports of Rudy Giuliani, who at the time was mayor of New York, actually specifically saying that they pulled the building. And I can't remember his exact words, but there are reports to the effect that he was
Mhm.
said to have told someone to actually bring that building down. I mean, it was evacuated, and there was an awful lot of investigations. Like you said, there are a large number of government agencies that had buildings and records and computers and vaults. There was money. There were vaults at the bottom of the trade centers that were filled with
Yeah.
gold, which somehow disappeared.
Yeah.
We've got the massive stock trades just before it all happened, which to me, I mean, it's a smoking gun. And for like screw YouTube to put a warning saying just because the BBC announced something had happened before it actually happened doesn't mean they had any idea that it was going to
Well,
happen. It's
yeah,
like,
that's fine, but it wasn't just the BBC. I mean, they even say in their warning other news agencies as well. In fact, the CNN, I think, noted it as well before it fell down. So it wasn't. I can understand if it was just the BBC, but it wasn't. The BBC was the most obvious and maybe the most visible because she's literally standing there with Building 7 behind her, saying it had fallen down when it was still behind her.
but
You
all
know?
of their news then and now comes from the wire agencies. I mean, the BBC had back then had more reporters on the ground, but they all just regurgitate what comes out of AP and Reuters and AFP and these big news agencies who are all controlled by the
Aye,
powers that be.
but come on. I mean, literally, how thick do you have to be to stand there and regurgitate shit that's been put to you when the cameraman can see the building? Can he not be going, no, don't
It's
do
not just
it?
the cameraman; it's the
Yeah,
producer.
well, yeah,
It's the
everybody.
guy. It's the
They'd be going,
interviewer guy. I
why,
mean,
why aren't they in a lug going, no, shut up, you've gone too early.
they've all got. I mean, they've all got these really discreet little earpieces so that the
Hmm.
producers can shout at them.
Yeah,
I mean, everything. All of their live broadcasts are not actually live. They're basically I mean, they're about 4 or 5 seconds
yeah,
out
yeah.
of live, so that they've got an opportunity to quickly kill something that people
No,
aren't
it's
allowed
like
to
us.
say.
I mean, we're about 10 seconds, and you and I are literally about 10 seconds behind what the people on YouTube see. So I can always go bloop and pull the plug.
Yeah, absolutely. If I start spouting off about things that I'm not allowed to spout off about, then I get the plug pulled.
Yeah, there you go. He gets his plug pulled.
But the point is that none of it has made any sense for 23, 24 years, 23 years.
Yeah.
And I mean, I personally have been trying to point this stuff out to my friends for at least that long. Um,
Well, you know
and
what does make sense, right?
I mean, admittedly, some of them were convinced, but plenty weren't.
Well, you know what does make sense, right? We get two big plus points. One for Larry Silverstein himself, right? Because we have an insurance scam to end all insurance scam. Because not only did he get paid out once, he get paid out twice. Because each plane was counted as a separate attack.
And he took out the insurance policies not long before it happened.
Well,
And
he'd
despite
only
the,
owned the building for like
yeah,
3 or 4 months, and it needed extensive reconstruction if it
well,
was to remain in use.
it was full of asbestos as well, so
Yeah.
they couldn't actually just pull it without having all sorts of problems. And the other thing is that he insured it against a terrorist attack, despite that I mean, yes, there was the original attack on the World Trade Center in the basement that happened in the 90s. But he fought the insurance companies tooth and
Oh
nail
yeah.
on the two attacks thing because he was adamant that there were two separate payouts. And
And he
he
won it eventually.
yeah, and
And
he actually sunk a frighteningly small amount of his own money into the whole thing as
yeah.
well.
And
Um,
Gunky's quite right because Larry had breakfast every Friday morning in the World Trade Center restaurant at 9 o'clock, except for that Friday morning. Where were you when it occurred?
it was the day after my birthday, and it was about 2 weeks after I'd had a a personal tragedy that I'm not going to go into. So I had loads of friends around, and I was in a my headspace was not particularly good at the time. But I pretty much all of my friends looking after me that day, and I was just at home, pretty much not that far away from. I don't think I was sitting in front of the computer. I was sitting on the sofa, but I'm literally within a couple of meters of where I was
Yeah.
when it happened. And it's a different TV now, but the location is the same. So I was here, and my friend Steve had gone to the pub with a few friends, and he actually messaged me and said put the TV on because the plane's just crashed into the World Trade Center. And so we had the TV on, and we were watching it, and we watched the second plane hit, and
Yeah.
then the two towers coming down, and then all the aftermath, and yeah, that was it. And basically seeing the world change in front of
Oh
our
yeah.
eyes, and it's
I was in San Diego, and I woke up that morning, turned the telly on to watch the news because we were intending to get up and go to Mexico that morning. Just as well we didn't.
well, yeah. I mean, it's yeah, because they closed all the airspace on the day as well.
Well, they closed the borders and everything. They closed. I mean, the Mexico border was shut straight away.
Mm.
I mean, if we'd not turned the telly on and not known that a plane had just crashed into the World Trade Center and we'd gone down and crossed the border on the way out, we would never have got back in for at least 3 or 4 days.
It's the world pretty much went crazy that day, and has only gotten more crazy in the days since.
Yeah,
And there's all
yeah,
sorts of. I mean, one of the things that I found quite interesting when all of the stuff happened in 2020. Not so much what was actually going on, but the reaction to it online. I found that the arguments and the tone of people going up against those who were against lockdowns and jabs and the whole subversive right wing extremist conspiracy theorist anti-vaxxer community. But the arguments that were being used against them online, the words, things like trope and canard, which I mean, these two words are not generally used, but they are used a lot by a certain community of people that seek to protect a certain country that's doing rather unpleasant things right now that I'm
mm.
not going to mention because I don't want to start triggering things. But
Well, you reminded me about the dancing guys on top of the van.
well, yeah, this is when we look at all of the people that are involved. Larry Silverstein, for example, we've got the
Yeah,
five dancing you know who's that were arrested in New Jersey,
yeah.
who were on top of a moving van with a camera on a tripod pointed at the buildings,
And when he says a
giving each
moving
other high
van,
fives.
when you say a
And
moving van, you don't.
and holding up, like
Yeah,
sitting there with a
yeah.
bloody lighter in front of the building. And
When you say a moving van, though, you mean a van that is used to move things, not one that's actually travelling.
yeah, sorry, a removals van, like a
Yeah,
U-Haul type thing.
yeah, yeah.
And they were basically arrested, and it was all done very quietly. And they ended up on Israeli TV spouting some bollocks about whatever,
Yeah,
and the whole thing was brushed under the carpet. But one of the things that I found in my research, and this is what got me into trouble online, and I was exposed to the people who were debunking it, the fact checkers in 2000, so they weren't called that.
yeah,
And anyone who suggested a link between 9/11 and a certain country in the Middle East that shall remain nameless
yeah,
was instantly jumped on, and the techniques that we used to jump on them were exactly the same techniques, phraseology,
yeah,
methodology, everything else that was used to jump on the people who were protesting lockdowns and everything else.
yeah,
And the only thing that changed was the actual terms. And instead of referring to 9/11, they were referring to the coup.
yeah.
And I found it uncanny
I know,
actually,
I know.
because it was something that they were so visceral, and it just, to me, that's just a massive red flag. And then when you look at all of the key players, from Larry Silverstein through all of the neocon Zyocon people that are currently buggering the bloody world up. People like
And
Bolton.
why were the Saudi royal family allowed to leave after the airspace had been closed?
Not just that, but a whole bunch of Bin Laden's relatives were all. There was a
Yeah,
plane there was literally there
yeah,
were planes that were traveling around the U.S. picking up loads of high-ranking Saudis and Bin
yeah.
Laden's family and all these other people and schlepping them off to the Middle East, despite the fact that everyone else was on lockdown. Ooh,
Hmm.
sounds familiar.
Yeah, doesn't it?
I mean, we've
Right.
got the footage of Andrew Tate jetting around the world, spouting off his particular brand of bollocks
Yeah,
during
yeah, we have.
lockdowns.
Yeah, indeed. Let's have a quick look at. Let's have a quick look at. Where are we? Where are we? This one. Now I don't.
Sounds a bit irritating.
Yeah, well, the sound it's been slowed down, but they left the sound on. But the thing is, that did come down at free fall speed as well. That there's no doubt that that building came down at controlled demolition, because steel frame there's never been a steel frame skyscraper brought down by fire. Never until 9/11, and then we had three all in one go. You know, but there was a hotel in, I think it was in Madrid, or Barcelona or something. But it burned. It was just it burned for 3 days, and they're still using it today.
It's the only steel framed building in history that has ever collapsed within an hour due to fire. Simple as. It's never
Yeah,
happened
exactly.
before.
Never
It
happened
never
before.
happened since. The building was designed to withstand everything that happened to it that day. And Jenny and John mentioned my old blog. It's
Yeah, yeah,
codshit.com.
yeah.
And
That's
I
right.
mean, I'm not very active on there. I've posted a few memes and stuff, but it's not the main reason I keep it active is because there's a massive archive of stuff on there that is not available pretty much anywhere else. Particularly lots of articles from Paul Joseph Watson when he was running prisonplanet.com.
Hmm.
And he's now doing he's now kind of left the whole conspiracy theory space and he's doing his wacky little videos, which I watch them sometimes, but it's all a bit irritating now. Anyway, but
Yeah, he is a bit.
there's a massive archive of stuff on there relating to 9/11 and the 7/7 bombings and all sorts. So people are welcome to use that as a resource. And it's not exhaustive by any stretch of the imagination, but I mainly keep it around, like I said, because there's stuff that I remember. Oh, I remember reading something, and then you realize it's not online anymore, and then I go back to my blog, and it's still there. But it's there's no aspect of what happened on 9/11 which tracks with the official explanation. And you and I have never claimed to know what happened.
No.
We've only, I mean, we've done, this is now the second show we've done about it. And it's only ever been speculation and mainly just looking at stuff like a building falling into its own footprint and saying, no fucking way.
Especially a building
Just,
that size.
I
You know?
mean, I'm to me, it is so breathtakingly, blindingly obvious that that building did not come down because of pancakes. Something else happened. And I don't know what
Yeah.
that something is. I suspect it's a combination of some things. Like, I mean, there's
Well, you've got
some of the,
you've got people that were on the scene, right? Who are trained emergency workers. You've got the fire services that were there, and they said they could hear, you know, pop, 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 like controlled explosions going
William
off.
Rodriguez, the
Yeah,
caretaker,
yeah,
the that basically he swears down that there was an explosion. And I mean, he's unfortunately dead now, which was all a little bit suspicious as well. But I mean, you only have to do a search on a reputable video site like Odyssey or Rumble or somewhere like that,
mm,
and do a search for his name, William Rodriguez 9/11, and you'll find plenty of videos
yeah,
about him. I mean,
yeah,
I mean, he was not one of those people that kept his mouth shut, but he was also not one of the people, apart from at the very beginning. And once the thing about 9/11, because I remember watching it unfold, because to start with, there was all sorts. There was firemen talking about explosions. There was William Rodriguez talking about explosions. And then once the system had settled on what their story was going to be, all of these stories disappeared.
Mhm.
Unfortunately for us, there was plenty of people out there who had their videotape recorders handy and were taping this stuff, which has ultimately found its way online.
Yeah.
And so we have proof of it. I mean, it's like the BBC still trying to deny that report we saw about World Trade Center 7. I mean, it's just gaslighting of the first order. But that, again, it seems to be the thing that the BBC excels at the most these days.
So people are talking in the chat about directed energy weapons and Judy Wood and things like that. And,
Well, we covered that on the last show, and
we
that
did
one.
cover it on the last show, and there's something I was thinking about that maybe detracts from her, you know, her kind of synopsis of what she thought has gone on, and then that. I mean, I obviously with doing this YouTube channel and making videos and things, and being heavily involved in editing stuff and filming stuff for people outside and stuff like that. I've noticed that there's a massive difference between the quality that you get on digital filming and what you get from tape. And remember, when this happened, everybody was using tape.
Mhm.
You know, everybody was using not digital. Well, it might have been digital, but it was still going on to either VHS-C, usually Betamax, or 8mm tape.
They would
And
have struggled
and
getting away with it
yeah,
today,
yeah, yeah.
because as
But
soon as that first plane hit, everyone would have had their smartphones out.
oh yeah,
There would
I know.
probably have been people live streaming on freaking TikTok and Instagram
Mhm.
that were getting inundated by the pyroclastic cloud coming from the bloody
Yeah,
buildings.
yeah, there would be. Yeah.
And then it would just, yeah. So, and also the analog footage isn't very easy to analyze.
No, it's not.
The digital footage you can actually run through computer software, and you can do all sorts of funky things with
Well,
it.
see, the beauty, if it had been digital, right? If it had been digital footage, you could pull it into an editor, and I've done this. You know, it's like, see the guy that's allegedly, you know, put one through his head the other day. You know, the rapper.
Hmm.
When you look at that in an editor and go frame by frame, it doesn't quite show anything. You know. So I had my doubts about it the first time I saw it, and I still have my doubts about it. I don't know if it's some kind of elaborate scam, but yeah, when you can go frame by frame, and most people these days are shooting at 60 frames per second,
Mm.
so you're getting an awful lot of information there.
Yeah.
It doesn't give them any room to avoid stuff.
No.
But when you go to tape, you're down at 23.96 or whatever they're shooting at. So for every second, you only had 24 frames, really.
And one also has to wonder how much footage exists that's been confiscated. Because, I mean,
Mhm.
if we look at the Pentagon attacks, for example,
Yeah.
I mean, the first thing that happened is the FBI went round to every single place
Mhm.
in that area that had CCTV footage and got all of the tapes or compact discs or whatever the hell they were using for it,
Yeah.
and carted
Videotape,
those
probably.
off, and it's never been seen. The only
Never.
thing that we've ever seen is that one crappy picture of
Of a
video
nose cone.
of, well, I mean, it just no.
It could be anything. Yeah.
Exactly.
It could be
I mean,
absolutely anything.
yeah, precisely.
Well,
But
here and there's the other thing that the phone conversations from the planes that I find hard to believe because you still can't get a phone connection to the cellular network when you're at 30,000 feet today. Even when you're allowed to, you know how you're allowed to use your phone now on the plane, but
mm,
you can't make a phone call at 30,000 feet because it will not connect.
no.
So how the hell did these people connect for like? I mean, some of them were on the phone for like 3, 4, 5 minutes. It's just not a done thing,
It's
especially especially when a plane's moving allegedly at 500 miles an hour, right? It's going to be passing through cell tower zones so quickly that they're never going to be able to hand off quick enough
Well, it's
to follow
certainly
it.
not. Well, certainly not with the technology that
No.
we're talking about existed in 2001. Um, and I mean, there's the Shanksville crash as well,
Yeah.
which equally was basically a hole in the ground and a whole bunch of debris.
But the hole was
Um,
already there.
well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that again didn't. I mean, this whole. I don't want to kind of disparage any heroic passengers or anything because we've got the whole narrative that was constructed
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
bits of footage that were overheard of these passengers saying that they're going to take over the plane and that the plane then ends up crashing. I just don't believe
Let's
it for
go.
a second.
Let's
I mean,
rock.
yeah, let's roll.
Let's roll. Yeah.
That's the one. And it's just too Hollywood.
It is. It
It,
is.
once the
But
once the
having
event.
having having said that though, Ed, I mean, you know Americans, and every American is a natural born actor. They think they're playing a part. They really do. And when these things happen, I think some of them actually think, oh, this is just like, such and such and such and such a movie. Let's roll, I mean, I think they think they're playing a part. I really do. And they might be right. Maybe
Yeah,
they are
but
playing
did
a
that
part.
actually happen? Did it
No,
actually happen?
probably not.
And I personally am skeptical.
But this is
Like I said,
again, it's the American psyche. They always have a story that involves the person being a hero,
but
So
the whole thing was. I mean, once
can't have
everything had
someone
happened,
can't have
there.
someone die without being a hero.
Well, not just that, but once it wasn't just that
Yeah, I know.
isolated event. And I mean, we've got so many different things happened, and we haven't even touched on the all of the war games that were going on.
Yeah, well, yeah.
That there happened to be multiple different exercises involving aircraft and hijacked aircraft, to the point that some of the radar operators and stuff were alleged to have said, "Is this a drill or is this real life?" And they had loads of fake, because there was, when they do these drills, the computer systems can generate fake aircraft on radar. So
Yeah.
they had loads of fake stuff happening because of the exercises, and then the real stuff happening. And I mean, when you think about it, it's literally the only way that this whole thing could have been pulled off, because I mean, this is the US air defense systems. I mean, they're used to intercepting Russian bombers and light aircraft. And I
Yeah.
mean, planes go astray. Something that a lot of Europeans don't understand about America is that because it's so big and people have, relatively speaking, a lot of money, there are a lot of private planes, and there's a lot of people that will have a plane just to like commute to work and shit like that. I mean, obviously that's an exaggeration, but there are a lot more aircraft events that happen, planes that go astray, planes that crash, things like that. So normally the American air traffic control system deals with all of that stuff seamlessly, and
Yeah.
the
Well,
only way that
look at that golfer where the Learjet obviously had some kind of problem
yeah,
with the oxygen supply, and they all basically blacked out.
asphyxiated, yeah,
Yeah, and the plane just kept on flying, and they were up and shadowing that within seconds, basically, well, within minutes.
absolutely. And the whole notion that these aircraft were suddenly somehow allowed to meander across the United States by people that were barely qualified on a Cessna, and
Yeah,
reportedly went to flight school saying that they wanted to learn how to take off but not land, and all this kind of nonsense. And then on top of that, we have the fact that there are multiple pilots, some of whom I follow on Twitter, who are a really good bunch, who basically say, "No way, just no. Just no. Just shut up. No, there's no way that any human is." I mean, we're talking about the planes that hit the Twin Towers, and
yeah, yeah.
I mean, there's
The
military
Pentagon
pilots.
one.
Yeah, there's
The
military
Pentagon
pilots
one.
that have said it to me. There's civilian pilots that have said it to me. It's just,
Yeah, the flight path
and
of the
I mean, I'm not a pilot, but I will listen to
yeah
an experienced pilot that has 20, 30 years experience
Yeah.
flying these passenger aircraft. And if that person tells me that one of those aircraft cannot do a particular something with a human at the controls,
Yeah.
I'm inclined to believe them.
The Pentagon's flight path, the one that's hit the Pentagon, the flight path for that would have to have been a Hail Mary from God knows where to pull that one off, because it was like a perfect descending circular corkscrew
But
down.
we're talking
You
about
just couldn't do it.
maybe a pilot that was still fit, maybe in his late 50s, that had got 30, 40 years experience of flying particular aircraft, might be able to do something like that. But some like Saudi
But to bring it across the
just
lawn, right? To bring it across the lawn without hitting the grass and yet taking out the lampposts, it just beggars belief.
the whole point about passenger planes and most planes is that when they're that low to the ground, the aircraft designers and everybody else who assumes that you're trying to land the aircraft.
Yeah,
You have your landing gear down,
yeah.
and you're basically prepared to touch the ground. And it just doesn't make sense for a plane that big to have been able to swoop that low in.
At that kind of speed,
And
at that
and
density of air.
and I'm sorry if it had, and there was some CCTV footage that showed it categorically, they would have bloody released it.
Yeah, they would have. They would have.
Simple as. I mean, the only frames that they got were the only frames out of all of the different video footage from all the different cameras that showed anything even remotely resembling a plane.
Was the
And even
parking
then, you
camera.
have to suspend a large amount of disbelief.
Yeah, it was the parking camera, wasn't it? The
Yeah.
one where you put your card in to enter the
It's
car
just
park.
you just can't make it up. And there's cameras at petrol stations and ATM machines. And okay, America doesn't have, certainly not in 2001, didn't have the same sort of concentration that the UK did even back then. But there must have been more footage than just that one petrol station. I mean,
There must
it
have been,
beggars belief. And
yeah.
it's the same with, well, you've got 3 buildings in New York that all collapse into their own footprint,
Yeah.
one of which barely gets talked about because it's so bleedingly obvious. I mean, okay, the Twin Towers, you can pass that off as the official story, just about. But as soon as you start mentioning World Trade Center 7, and you actually show that video to people who believe the official story, it's actually one of the things that I've used in the past that has actually convinced a few people to take what I'm saying seriously. Is when you show them that, it's like nothing hit that.
Yeah.
Explain that to me,
Yeah, nothing.
and they can't.
Yeah, and let's face it, an office fire doesn't burn hot, right? An office fire doesn't burn hot, and kerosene doesn't burn hot.
And
Okay.
offices, most of the furniture and carpets and everything, it has to. I mean, they have fire safety
Yeah,
standards, so
they do.
they just
don't burn hot.
no.
And kerosene, which is jet A1 is basically kerosene, right? It doesn't burn hot. It's paraffin, you know.
And
It
there's
only
lots.
burns hot if you're force feeding air through it at 500 miles an hour.
Yeah, and in the case of the World Trade Center buildings, the WTC 1 and 2, they were largely concrete, glass, that kind of thing. But World Trade Center 7 had not concrete. The World Trade Center 7 had concrete in it, and the 2 twin towers were more steel glass kind of frame construction. And it just doesn't track. And
It doesn't.
again, you see the top, the collapse. You can see it on the WTC collapse video. The top starts collapsing first, and the rest of the building just gives way underneath it.
Yeah.
And then there's a sodding great big hole in the middle of the building when you look at it from above as well, which I have never been able to explain.
Yeah, because that's the strongest part of those buildings.
Precisely. It's like the steel, the central columns were just gone. It's the same with the World Trade Center buildings.
Well, you know,
I mean,
there had been work every weekend for something like 7 weeks.
yeah. And there
before
was
this happened.
power outages, and
Yeah.
there was all sorts of trucks and workmen. It wasn't just, this is something that a lot of people don't understand about the collapse of those buildings, is that it wasn't just what happened on the day, is that there was plenty of residents of the buildings that were reporting weird shit going on for
Yeah.
weeks beforehand. And we have the FEMA emergency management people that, oh yeah, it just happened to do a drill on September the 10th. I mean,
Let's just send all the planes to Canada.
yeah, yeah. It's just, I mean, there's so many aspects of the story that just scream foreknowledge, and it's mind blowing.
That is, it's
It's just, and
the thing is when you're sitting there experiencing it, right? When you're experiencing it and not being particularly conspiracy minded at that time, you're thinking, oh my god, because initially you turn the telly on, you see the tower burning, and you think, oh, a light aircraft has flown into it, right? Somebody sightseeing, hot dogging, they've flown into the building, and you think, okay, and then you realize it was a passenger aircraft, and then while you're watching it live, you get the next one, another 767, which is a big aircraft, right? It's a big aircraft hammering into the next one, allegedly, right? Because when you look at the footage, it looks like the nose cone goes out the other side, but we've seen what happens to aircraft nose cones when they hit birds, not when they hit 4-inch steel girders.
well,
It's like trying to force a can of Coke through a sledgehammer, and it doesn't matter how fast you fire that can of Coke at that block of steel, you're never going through it.
no,
You're just never going to do it.
and certainly not when you actually look at the length or the width of the building that fire rips through. I'm perfectly prepared to believe that there was some sort of holographic technology being used, and they had explosives planted in 2 floors of those buildings, which were sequenced so that they go off one after the other, and it makes it look like a plane has gone through the building.
Yeah,
And meanwhile, there's some sort of, because there was an aircraft that was flying around that's basically not been identified. So could
was there a helicopter as well?
I mean, there was various different aircraft, but I'm talking there was a mystery. I think it was a large, like a Boeing 747 or something like that, that
Yeah,
was circling the area that nobody that didn't have any markings or anything, and it was high enough that the only pictures that have ever come out of it were extremely blurry and kind of
yeah,
zoomed in. But there was plenty of weird shit going on that day. I mean, I'm prepared to believe in directed energy weapons. I'm prepared to believe in holograms. I'm prepared to entertain the notion of a mini nuke, although I think the issue that I've got with the mini nuke hypothesis is the bathtub,
too much and
simply put.
too much dust. It would be too
Yeah.
much radioactivity. If
Whereas
it was going to be a mini nuke, it would need to have been basically
yeah,
an air blast to avoid any radioactivity. And
and also we've got phenomena. Some of the things that sort of swayed me towards some of the alternative energy hypotheses are some of the unbelievably strange phenomena, like a Bible melted into a steel girder, and the fact that there was vast amounts of paper floating around
yes, there
all
was.
over the area, but no office desks, no computers, no chairs, no none of the normal stuff that you would expect to find two gigantic office buildings.
Yeah, it was actually a
Like,
hurricane. Wee fat shug, but this
yeah,
is
but the hurricane changed direction
yeah.
on
That's what he's
September the
saying.
9th or 10th or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's saying a tornado did a 90-degree turn to avoid the area. No, it was a hurricane, and
yeah, it was a hurricane.
it turned out to sea. That's the Empire State Building after it was hit by a B-29 Mitchell bomber.
And I didn't collapse.
No,
I mean, the Empire State Building's still there, so
yeah,
clearly didn't collapse.
it didn't collapse.
I mean, the thing is that, okay, admittedly, it's a totally different type of construction,
Yeah,
but it's a much older type of construction. So the World Trade Center buildings were built in the 60s,
yeah,
and I can't remember when the Empire State Building was. Yeah, I
20s,
mean, we're
30s,
talking,
something like that.
okay, so 30, 40 years prior, and i- they had the same, I mean, they knew what potentially might hit the building.
Yeah.
New York has got a couple of very busy airports that are not that far away from the World Trade Center buildings. So if you're going to build a giant bloody building in New York, you're going to have to take into account that what happens if a plane hits it. When you're building something like that, you don't want the bloody thing to collapse into its own footprint within an
19,
hour. I mean,
yeah.
because this is one of the things, one of the groups that I've always found most convincing is Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. And I
Yeah.
mean, those guys have, like Richard Gage and people, they've been banging away at it for 20 plus years. And their whole point, they started out saying, look, we are architects. A building has just done something that no building has ever done before. And we need to find out why. Why the hell are you stopping us from properly investigating this thing and trying to learn some lessons that the next time we build a giant building, it doesn't get hit by a plane and fall into its own footprint?
Well,
I mean,
exactly. So 1930, construction began. It was completed in 31. So it only took a year to build the Empire State Building.
holy
102,
shit.
102 stories in a year.
That's amazing.
Yeah, opened 11th of April 1931. Construction started 17th of March 1930. 1 year.
I mean, we couldn't. It amazes me that buildings
That's
now,
amazing.
okay, they're a lot bigger, but I mean
But
the
are
Empire
they?
State Buildings.
102 stories.
Yeah,
That's only 8 stories less than the Twin Towers.
yeah. So I mean, it makes you wonder how, I don't know, modern construction architects. Everything takes longer now. I guess people need to get paid.
Bloody hell. It now costs you 41 quid to get a ticket to go into the to go and have a look at the top here.
And that thing that they replaced the Twin Towers with is fugly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even inspiring. It's just a giant glass thing.
Yeah.
And
It's just another big fucking target.
yeah,
Really?
well, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Maybe I hope they built it a little bit stronger and it doesn't just collapse as soon as a feather lands on the bloody top. I mean, what the hell?
Oh, good grief.
But this is the thing about 9/11. It's maddening, particularly after 20 plus years, that we are still dismissed as conspiracy theorists for trying to point out physics,
Yeah,
for,
yeah.
for trying to say that, look, according to all of the laws of physics and nature that I understand it, this didn't happen.
Yeah, well, the people that build the planes said the plane can't do that speed at that altitude. It would literally tear itself apart. You know, it wouldn't just lose a couple of bits. The plane would disassemble, much like Elon's rockets do. It would rapidly disassemble in flight because it just cannot fly at that speed and that density of air. You know, and these are the guys that build the plane. So I mean, the wings would rip off, the tail would be gone. The thing would never make it to the Empire State to the Twin Towers at that speed.
Hang on. We've got a. Can I do a screen share?
Yeah, yeah.
Hang on. Let's just do.
See if you go to the thing with the up arrow.
Yeah, no,
just
because
share
we can
screen.
just drop something for viewers who may not have seen it. Let's just do the whole window. Right. We have got the latest, greatest piece from Mr. Bob Moran. And it's the moon landing as well. Can we see it?
Yeah,
Did it come
yeah,
up properly?
they can see it. I'm just cropping it so they can
Bob.
still see us.
Dude, relax. How could anyone ever not believe this? Safe and effective. Oh, I love Bob. And he's eating a sandwich as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've done the moon landings as well, haven't we? And
Oh, hilarious! Right, let me get rid of
Yeah,
that.
they were. Oh,
Oh,
excuse me. Oh, what's happened there?
I was just trying to cancel the screen share. Hang on.
Still, is it still there? Hold on, I can kill it there. No, I don't know. There we go. You're back. You're back.
Cool.
No, you're not.
No,
What
I'm
the
not
hell?
back.
Where? Or the techie. Right, here we go. Boom. There you go.
Yay!
You're back.
Hello.
Back, baby. So yeah,
So
I mean, it's just there's just so much, and in
the thing
some
that
respects,
no, go on.
we've done this twice now, and it still feels as if there's more to be got into because we've
Well,
not
this
touched really on the rest of the dustification stuff and all that, but we did do a lot of that in the first one. To
and
be
it's
fair,
also what's happened since, because
yeah,
notwithstanding what happened on the actual day, the the security state that was put in place. I mean, people born before 2000 have got barely any idea of what the world was like before
mm,
9/11, and
yeah, I know.
all of the authoritarianism, all of the wars, all of the death, all of it seems to somehow
I mean,
lead back there.
people don't seem to be able to. So, a number of people can't believe that you used to be able to smoke on an aircraft.
I know, and not just that, but everybody smoked. And I actually have this personal theory that the amount of the degree to which the world has gotten turned into a shitty place to live is actually proportional to the number of non-smokers there are. So non-smokers, it's all your fault, literally.
Yeah, I mean, it was a different world. It really was a different world.
Mm. I refuse to give up smoking just for that reason. It's like Bill Hicks says, I'd quit smoking, but I'd become one of you.
Yeah,
But it's not just that. It's the freedom that we've lost increasingly, that ramped up in the last 4 years. It's now getting to the point where anyone who's actually questioning the whole notion that we actually deserve to have some freedom, that it's a God-given right, and that freedom of speech is a right that we all have. It's not something that the government gives us. And if it's what happened with lockdown. You have to stay indoors, and not all of us paid any attention to that, but there was plenty who did. But all of this, there's a continuum that traces back to 9/11, and then when you go further back than that, you end up at places like JFK.
hmm
But one of the things for me that's enduringly fascinating about 9/11 is that I lived through it. I didn't live through the Kennedy
yeah,
assassination, but I did live through 9/11, and you can trace all of the bad stuff happening in the world today back to
yeah.
that one event.
You can really. I mean, it's the beginning of authoritarianism and tyranny by governments.
Yeah,
I mean, because I think they saw what they could get away with, and then, of course, on the back of it, they kicked off a number of wars. I mean, twice into Iraq. Into Afghanistan. The America. It in some respects, while it was the beginning of the authoritarianism and tyranny, it was the beginning of the end of American
to stop
hegemony
there,
as
it
well.
was the beginning of the end of America.
Yeah, exactly. That's
That's,
it.
I mean, if you think about what America America claims it stands for,
hmm
and the illusion that most Americans live under about themselves. Now, let's just stop here for a second, because that spirit of freedom and the attitudes that are embodied by the US Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. I know plenty of Americans personally
hmm
who still embody the shit out of all of those ideals. The problem is that it's the American government, but in the UK we have the same problem. I mean, when you look at we had lockdown a lot less harsh than the rest of Europe, and I think that was because they knew that they couldn't push it too far. and there was plenty of people who just ignored it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I ignored it, and
Me too.
I mean, I covered what 8 countries. I did 12,000 miles, traveling all around Europe.
All right, so you ignored the absolute shit out of it.
Oh, I ignored that and then some. I mean, I moved in a tier 4 lockdown to France, right? And as I was crossing the border, getting onto the ferry, the English guy at the border controls, took our passports, gave them back, and goes, "Well, have a lovely trip." The French guy didn't even open the window. He just waved us on you go. Right? And then once you're in France, once you're in Europe, that's it. You can go where you like. Nobody's going to stop you. The biggest problem was you couldn't go into a restaurant in Germany unless you were on the Autobahn. Because if you were on the Autobahn, you could go into the restaurants and the service stations, and nobody gave a shit because all the truck drivers use them, and you can't interfere with the trucks, right?
No.
So you could do anything you liked in Germany except eat. Like, you couldn't go to McDonald's in a town, but you could go to McDonald's in a service station and they would serve you without batting their eyelid. And then of course we went to Denmark. And you had to actually cross a border to get into Denmark because Denmark had border controls, right? So we rose up and we thought, well, what's going on here? Because none of us were, jibby jabbed. None of that nonsense, right? The only one that had a jibby jab was a dog. But anyway, so we rolls up and the Dutch police comes up and he's going, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I said, we're going to Sweden. We're looking to buy a house there." And the guy goes, "Well, good luck." So we then spent 6 weeks, I think, in Denmark and Sweden. And it was a revelation because while everybody else was locked down, we were sitting having meals in Copenhagen. We went to the pictures in Sweden. You could do anything that you liked. You could go to the cinema. You could go into coffee shops. There was nobody wearing anything over their face. There was no face coverings, right? Nobody bothered their arse in Sweden and Denmark. It was a complete revelation.
Well, and the whole of Sweden didn't die. I mean, they just...
Well, they did less. I mean, about the same amount of people died in Sweden as died in Scotland, but Sweden's got double the population. So,
and here's some bad news for you: that the United Kingdom is about to get a prime minister that wanted more of all of that stuff.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Just, we are so screwed.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we are.
Literally, I think it'll be a case of, will the last person to leave Britain please turn the lights out?
I think I might go back to Sweden. I mean, we nearly bought a house with 5 acres. It had 5 acres of woodland. It was a house. It had its own barn with a skidoo in it that was being left. It had a wood store. It had a garage and it had a workshop, right? And they wanted 14 grand. You know what we should have done? We should have sold the camper van and bought the house.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's just, the world is crazy, and it all starts with 9/11.
Yeah, it does.
And the other thing that I think the other side hone their skills on is how to get people within the truth community arguing with each other about things.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't like the term truth community because, to be honest, I don't think there is a truth community because, as you say, people argue with each other all the time, and some people go down some fucking deep rabbit holes. I mean, we're not bad, right? We're not too bad, but see all this Q shit. I just find that ridiculous.
Well,
I mean, if we're waiting on the plan, that was 5 years ago, and what the fuck's happened? Nothing.
No, it's a distraction. I think that Q is a massive psyop. I do think that the Anons have actually done a whole bunch of sterling research, and there's a lot of stuff that they've dredged up, which is, I mean, it's factual. There's plenty of evidence about it, things like Pizzagate and stuff that we can't really talk about on YouTube without getting into lots of trouble. But there's a lot of stuff that the people who believed in Q did. Q itself, unfortunately, no. And I'm not one of those people that thinks Donald Trump is coming back to save anyone, because
There
he's
are
just
no saviors.
I mean, Gaza is kind of a line for me. It's if there's a U.S. president that is going to enable that even more, then forget about America. It's not going to last.
Well, yeah, I'm just not going to go into it.
No.
I'm not going to go into
Anyway,
it
we were here to talk about 9/11. So,
Yeah.
but I think we've just
I
we've
think
done
we've done it.
another we've done another whole
Yeah.
show on it, and I'm more than happy to come back if there's new stuff that comes out, or
Yeah,
if we
yeah,
want
absolutely.
to have another chat about 9/11 at some point, because there's still plenty of stuff that we didn't even cover in the last hour.
Well, the thing is, I mean, we've actually probably got about 4 times the audience we had when we did 9/11 the first time. Because, you know, when we did 9/11 the first time, we probably had about 4 people watching us. And tonight we had, I mean, we've had 50 views. So that's not bad, you know?
That's good,
Yeah, that's not too bad.
which shows you that there's still a lot of interest in the subject.
Oh,
And
I think there is. I think there is.
and I think that there's a lot of, because at the end of the day, we're never going to come out with any revelations, but actually just sometimes reviewing what we know. Occasionally, new bits of information come out, but also the facts in the world change as well. And the more the world changes, the more I realize that it all starts with 9/11.
Yeah, yeah. And Gunky Fadget said he was watching Redacted. Redacted's jumped the shark. They've gone all in on this this UFO stuff. They really have. They've gone all in on it, and I mean we've danced around the subject, but they seem to think it's aliens. You know,
Well, yeah. At the end of
I'm
the
not
day,
saying it's aliens.
no, I know you're not. I know you're not. The thing is that we've got psyops on top of
Right,
psyops on
right.
top of psyops going on now.
Hold on here. Hold on. So let's just say people have travelled faster than light across the galaxy to come to our resplendent little jewel, right?
Full of complete clown lunatics,
Yeah.
psychopaths.
Why?
Well, the only
Why?
no the okay, I've got a
And
good
why
no
are they staying hidden?
no, I have a good answer to that question. To keep us quarantined on this freaking planet.
Yeah, but then they wouldn't expose themselves. They would just keep us quarantined. And you know, I
Well,
think Elon Musk might be an alien.
how do we know that the Van Allen belt's not some intricate alien construction designed to keep us on the bloody planet?
Well,
That's true.
that's true. But yeah.
Well,
it could be.
maybe this planet is where the rest of the galaxy sends all its
Prison planet.
lunatics.
Prison planet. We could be a prison planet, mate. Because let's face it, we have an awful lot of lunatics running this asylum.
Yeah, and there's some proper psychopaths that are in charge as well.
Yeah. But hey, we let them.
Yeah. At the end
Let
of the
them.
day.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Ed. I've had
Thank you.
a most illuminating evening, and I've enjoyed revisiting 9/11. I thought we might have been struggling to get through the hour, but I think that's nearly an hour and a half now.
Well, with 9/11, there's always more to talk about, and I mean, I'm more than happy to revisit other rabbit holes that we've done.
Yeah, of course we can.
If the audience
yeah.
are interested in us talking about something else, that's
Yeah, so
always
audience,
welcome too.
feel free to put some suggestions in the comments as to what you'd like us to talk about next, because you know nearly always it's us coming up with the ideas, and I think we're going to have to touch mud fossils at some point, but
I'm-
it's going to be a night where I need like a couple of bottles of wine probably because it's a tough one, right?
Well, we've got giants as well. I mean, we've already done.
Giants are part of the mud fossil stuff,
Yeah.
because it is really really tough.
But it's going to touch into cataclysms and the 12,000 year disaster cycle and the fact that we're all going to be mud fossils probably in the next 30 years. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's true.
So
That's
That's
true.
twice
let's
now.
leave the audience on that pleasant thought.
Yeah. So, well, thank you much, everyone. Thank you very much. It's been lovely.
Thanks, guys. It's been fun.
If you feel the need, you can please like, share, and subscribe, because that's the biggest thing you could do is share us out to other people, so as that we can try and build this channel and ultimately maybe start to make some actual money.
I'm not here for the money, but it'd be nice if those guys
Yeah.
made some money.
If and dare I say it, if you find yourself flush, you can always make a donation at kofi.com/chasing descent. But thank you again, and as always, Ed, it's been great for them.